on Michael Giuliani, there is some straight talk with Mr. James Tien. Now, James Tien, thank you very much. You're a controversial figure. Let me introduce you. You're with the Liberal Party. You're the honorary chairman of the Liberal Party. Now, I want to start off, Mr. Tien, with the Li Bo case. That case is getting curiouser and curiouser. Every day something seems to change. The latest that happened a couple of days back was that the mainland now says that one of the 5 people who have disappeared, one of the 5 booksellers who have disappeared, Mr. Gui Minhai, was involved in some traffic accident some 12 years ago and voluntarily surrendered to face justice. As a Hong Kong person, Mr. Tien, do you buy that story? How do you see this whole Li Bo case? I mean, do you think that there is something funny going on, or is it on the level? What do you think?
If I have to comment on this, Hong Kong people's main concern is about whether the Security Bureau can come over to Hong Kong and take people away either legally or illegally. But this current explanation of Mr. Li Bo going back to China as a witness for this Mr. Gui, who was now a European citizen who sort of disappeared.
And then now said that he went back voluntarily to face justice.
Exactly. If that's the explanation, Mr. Li should actually go across our border legally, leaving Hong Kong and entering China as a witness. I'm more concerned
he didn't do that. He said he went by himself through illegal channels.
Well, why would you want to go back to China through illegal channel if you're actually trying to help the Security Bureau or the legal system in the mainland about his friend's case that took place 12 years ago? I don't think we should be that interested on this particular case 12 years ago of a mainland resident who's now sort of in Bangkok or European citizen. We're more concerned about not specifically on Li Bo, but whether the Security Bureau can snatch people in Hong Kong legally or illegally. So I don't think right now the discussion diverting to Mr. Gui or Mr. Li Bo as a witness actually will clarify the sort of concern of the Hong Kong people.
So what bothers you most, Mr. Tien, is that whether Security Bureau agents came to Hong Kong and kidnapped a Hong Kong person and took him across the border. Do you think that has knocked a big hole in one country, two systems and Hong Kong people's confidence in one country, two systems?
Michael, certainly. That's the reason I asked the chief executive that question in Legico. I said Mr. Li Bo's case is of concern, not because of Mr. Li Bo. The higher level question is, can Security Bureau come to Hong Kong and snatch people? The even higher question is under one country, two system, under the high degree of autonomy, we are supposed to govern ourselves. Is that policy currently being affected or changed? That the Beijing officials allow Security Bureau to come to Hong Kong to do that? Because I always feel that all these years, 19 years already, the Security Bureau and the mainland can easily come over and do all sorts of things, but they have never done so. Why? It's because the central government will not allow the Guangdong security officials or bureau come over and do anything. And if this incident is true, then Hong Kong people will be very concerned.
Do you think
that is a much higher level of concern for us?
Do you think they actually came and snatched Mr.
I don't know.
away?
I hope it's not true. I really hope it's not true. And I will be really concerned if that is true.
But you know, in Legico, in the question and answer, you asked Mr. The chief executive, Mr. Leung Chun-ying, to go to Beijing and seek an explanation. Are you not worried that by saying that you will anger the mainland government? Because the last time you suggested that C.Y. Leung resign as the chief executive, you lost your post in one of China's highest advisory body, the CPPCC. And then this time you ask him to go to Beijing. Are you not worried you're going to anger Beijing again?
I'm sure I would not. I mean, anger Beijing. The reason I say that is that if you look in Hong Kong's case, if you ask our Security Bureau, Mr. Lai, to go and ask about it, or the mainland bureau, Mr. Tam, to ask about it. They are not getting any answer. And even if our chief executive asked the Security Bureau in Guangdong, I don't think we're getting an answer. So I'm suggesting that as the chief executive of Hong Kong, he's appointed by Beijing, but that's after elected by Hong Kong people, the 1,200 election committee. So I think our chief executive should be answerable to both the Hong Kong people and to Beijing. And he's the only one that could actually go to Beijing and ask Beijing leadership, not the Guangdong Security Bureau, and say, leaders, I'm having a problem. I got to give a good explanation to Hong Kong people that one country, two system is going all okay. The Security Bureau in the mainland have no right and should not and did not come to Hong Kong to sort of take people away illegally. Please tell me what happened. Then I think the leadership in Beijing will have to get an answer for our chief executive so that the chief executive will come back to Hong Kong and explain to all of us. And actually, I already told CY that will actually make him look good. The fact that he's concerned about this issue and try to get an explanation will only help him if he wants to have another run at the re-election in 2017.
In 2 months. Okay, you know what? Let's just see what CY Leung said and what you said. Let's have a watch.
One thing he probably needs to urgently address to win over support of Hong Kong people is on the issue of Mr. Li Bo.
14 days after a report has been made to the police, and there were cases in the past where it took more than 14 days.
Now, that was last week, and you said that is urgent. We need to have a solution to the Li Bo issue. But CY Leung said it's only been 14 days, and some cases take longer than 14 days. Mr. Tien, the longer this drags on, what does that do to Hong Kong people? Will they lose all confidence in the basic law and one country, two systems if this drags on?
I guess politics is politics. In politics, 1 day is too long. Although we cannot get an answer for 14 days. What I'm suggesting to the chief executive is that you should look concerned. Whether you get the right answer or the answer we want to hear is a different issue. The fact that if he's willing to go to go to Beijing from Hong Kong, just on one issue to see the leaders, asking specifically about Mr. Li Bo's issue on whether Mainland Security Bureau officials can come to Hong Kong and take people away. I'm sure Beijing will give him an answer on that general point, if not specifically the point about Mr. Li Bo. But he's saying that 14 days is not enough. Yeah. And then if you drag on, and today the new issue released by Mainland TV is about this Mr. Guai, something that's 12 years ago, that's certainly diverting their attention. We're more concerned about what's happening in Hong Kong than what's happening sort of in mainland driving accident that happened 12 years ago.
So you today will still renew your call that Mr. CY Leung should go to Beijing and demand answers?
I won't use the demand. Let's look at the scenario. If Mr. CY Leung leaves Hong Kong airport, have a whole press conference saying that I'm flying specifically to Beijing and I have an appointment with the leader just to ask this. Hong Kong people will be clapping their hands. At least you're going and find out what happened. And in Beijing, I'm sure after seeing the leaders, he could come out and make a statement. Now, whether the statement is something we like to hear, the answer is irrelevant. At least the point is that he made the trip, voiced his concern, and Hong Kong people will feel that he's doing something that addresses our concern, which is, again, this Mainland Security Bureau are now allowed to come and take people away to the mainland legally or illegally.
Why do you think, Mr. Tien, that he's not doing that? Why do you think he's, you've pressed him, others have asked him, and he just said a couple of days back, almost every day he says, we have heard nothing yet from the central government on this issue. Why is that?
I really don't know. Seriously. Why is he not doing that? I thought it would, in all sense, make him look good. He looked good in the eyes of the Hong Kong public. He certainly, when addressing the Beijing leaders, could say that I'm appointed by you after elected by Hong Kong people to govern Hong Kong. And this issue, where the Security Bureau can now come over to Hong Kong and sort of arrest people, is a concern of not only the Pan-Democrats,
but everybody.
Everybody, including a lot of businessmen or professionals in Hong Kong.
You're a businessman. Are people in the business sector worried about this? Do they feel that this is something that has really shocked
certainly,
them?
Michael, look at it. Especially now, so many members of the business community now have business dealing with the mainland. They have a factory there, import-export trade, real estate. There's so many business connections with a lot of businessmen in Hong Kong with investments in China. So if there's something that sort of borders one particular area, would the Security Bureau across the border can come over here and take people away? Of course, everyone is concerned. I feel probably the average person on the street, if they're not involved in sort of the Pan-Democrats' activity, probably will feel that this has nothing to do with them. But a lot of business or professional, whether you're an architect, whether you're an accountant that looks for the public accounts of a listed company on the mainland, will certainly be concerned about that issue.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. See you soon. Thanks for sticking around. This is Straight Talk with Mr. James Tien. Now, Mr. Tien, we spent the first half of the show on Mr. Lee Bo and the amazing situation that's been going on. Although I'd invited you to come here to talk about the policy speech of the chief executive, I'll ask you one more question about Mr. Lee Bo. Do you, in your mind, think, you know, and you do have close connections with the central government. You're supposed to be a pro-establishment figure.
I still am.
You still are, although many people don't believe that. But do you think, in your own mind, do you think the order to abduct these 5 people, if they were indeed taken across, do you think the order came from the very top?
Very top, you mean?
I mean the Xi Jinping, President Xi Jinping?
Oh, certainly, definitely not.
Certainly not. Why would you say that?
Well, I think that this is such a small issue. It's not worth handling it that way. I have a feeling it's more like to do with some local Security Bureau officials across the border, be it Shenzhen or be it Guangdong province, at most at that level. I don't think it's a provincial decision as far as the leaders are concerned. Why this so-called Mr. Lee Bo's disappearance, the way it happened, took so long to be investigated and something be made known.
Okay, well, it didn't. I think many people also agree that it didn't really come from the top. Let's move on to CY Leung again and his policy speech. Now, that speech, I think, created a lot of negative effect. People say that it didn't really focus on issues that Hong Kong people care too much about. It was more or less an agenda for his re-election. That's what people were saying, a manifesto for his re-election. You've got the speech right there. Tell me, is that a policy speech or a manifesto for his re-election?
Well, it's 71 pages long, and it's 261 paragraphs. I've been a legislator for many years. I would expect a policy address every year to sort of take stock of what happened last year, or at least when he took office, and tell us what he had achieved and what he did not achieve. And therefore, going on to say in 2016, I want to finish all these things that has been outstanding, plus a few more things I want to do in 2016. A policy address, as you can see, it writes 2016. It's a policy address for 2016. And it's so long on minute details or long-term vision, the One Belt, One Road.
One Belt, One Road was the long-term vision.
So long-term that even if Mr. CY Leung gets another 5 years, it won't be accomplished. So we're saying that this is actually not a policy address. It's more like something that he deferred, because a real policy address will show his failure in the last 3.5 years.
You think he failed in the last 3.5 years?
The reason is there are other researchers who recently came out with some detailed analysis by saying that Mr. Leung's government, right now, 3.5 years out of 5 years. 3.5 years is like 70% of the time of 5 years. He only got to do about 40% of what he set out to do. So the question should be, how are you to catch up in the remaining 1.5 years to complete the balance of the 60% of the objectives that you said 3 years ago that is not done? So nothing is mentioned about all the inventory taking, what they have achieved in the last 3.5 years. What's still missing? We all know that the urgent subject on housing shortage could not be achieved. With the current completion rate, he will be far short of what he said he would do when he took office. And other areas on policies is, again, when you talk about building more hospitals for 5,000 beds, that's building an infrastructure of hospital. But what about doctors, nurses? What's the solution or those?
So in fact, you're saying that the policy speech really was not a policy speech. Well, in fact, people had made comments about that. Let's watch.
At the leadership level, the policy address should not just consist of a laundry list of projects and minute tasks undertaken by departments.
I do not seek popularity when it's a choice of between popularity and producing actual results.
Now, he says he doesn't seek popularity, he seeks actual results.
Okay.
You have saying he didn't produce these results, right?
Well, if you look at it purely on the policy address, what he had achieved in the last 3.5 years, certainly he's not achieving results. And as a legislator, I could tell you my feeling is worse. His relationship with the Pan-Democrats in the Legislative Council, leading to the current filibustering, counting of quorum, the total uncooperative attitude of the Pan-Democrats, is making our Legislative Council a joke, a farce. We're simply not functioning. The Chief Executive did say that we get the IT Bureau finally done, although it took me 3 years.
3 years to do it, right.
I don't think that's a good answer. People will argue that if you could get it done in 6 months or 9 months, certainly it's a lot better than getting it done in 3 years. Now, if this is the way of him saying that I don't want popularity, I want to get things done, unfortunately for Mr. C.Y. Leung, he's not only not popular, he's not even getting things done.
He's not popular, not getting things done. Now, many people say, Mr. Tien, and give me this is straight talk. Give me a straight answer on this. Many people say you dislike Mr. C.Y. Leung and he dislikes you. The feeling is mutual. Why do you dislike him?
I don't dislike him personally. I just keep asking if he could cooperate with the Pan-Dems and get things done for Hong Kong, I'll support him. So a lot of the issues, for example, helping the elderly, the policy is good. So I'm saying that it's the issue, I don't have a problem. It's some of the issues, but it's the way he's handling the whole legislature. So my problem with him is not my problem with the Chief Executive, but rather my feeling of his treatment of the Pan-Dem and the Pan-Democrats' counter treatment of him that is now causing huge damages to Hong Kong as a society. We're not moving along at all, both economically and on the livelihood issues.
Well, a great damage to Hong Kong. The chairman, the leader of your Liberal Party, Mr. Felix Chung, was here some months back, and I asked him whether he or the Liberal Party, of which you're the honorary chairman, would support C.Y. Leung for another term. Many people say that this policy speech was a manifesto for another term. Will you support him for another term?
I think Felix's view is similar to mine.
You won't support him?
We're both saying that if he can get things done, we'll support him or whoever that gets things done. But right now, the fact is he's not getting things done for Hong Kong, regardless of whether the things he wants to do is up to our liking or not. He's not getting anything.
So in short,
done.
You're not going to support him?
Well, I've said that I'll support him if he could have a better working relationship with the Pan-Democrats in the Legislative Council and get things done.
All right, you know what? Many people say Regina Yip you know, is interested in that job, and you just saw her. If Regina Yip runs, who do you think will make a better CE, Regina Yip or Siwa Leung?
Well, I really don't know. But if CY is doing such a bad job, then anyone would say that maybe we should give Regina a try. At least she's
Would you want to
proven.
do that too?
Well, I think I have a better person in mind, but I guess it's too early to say
Who's
now.
that person?
Let's not talk about it.
But you have
I
another
don't want
person
that
in mind.
particular person to be targeted by Mr. C.Y. Leung if I mention his name.
Well, how do you mean targeted by Siwa Leung?
Well, obviously, we all know that if anyone shows interest, then the current chief executive will have a strong view against that person.
And target him or her?
Oh, of course they would.
Who is this person? Is he from the political
Well, I just said
party?
that I better not mention that. But we all know
It's a man or a
who
woman?
we're talking about. Come on, Michael, don't get me into that.
Okay, now, you know, supposing Siwa Leung runs for another term, you say you won't support Siwa Leung.
Because he cannot work,
He cannot work.
with the Pan-Democrats. And
All right.
we don't get things done in Legislative Council. Therefore, we're not getting things done in Hong Kong.
But,
There's
you know-
two areas. Firstly, the policies are moving ahead, and then the funding aren't there. And if you don't have money and you don't have policy, how can you govern a place?
All right, so you say you'd rather support Regina Yip. Okay, or another third person whom you won't name. But if C.Y. Leung runs again, my last question, I've run out of time. If C.Y. Leung runs again for another 5 years, how do you see Hong Kong?
Well, we already see it the way they are. Maybe another 5 years, we get things done for around 2-3 years. So the 10-year, we'll probably get things done for Hong Kong that we normally could have done in 4 or 5 years. And that certainly, as far as a businessman is concerned, is not very efficient.
All right, okay. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Good evening.